Hi, and welcome to A Cup of Tea with Steven. It's been a really exciting week. My friend, Samantha Lee Howitt, released her latest book, The House of Killers. You can catch her on A Cup of Tea on Outnews Global TV. And also her film's coming up, The Stranger in Our Bed. She had a really great do for it in Camden. Mr. Fabulous was there and quite a few others. Really great evening. But what was really amazing on Saturday was Anna Kennedy online put on Ottersman's Got Talent. I was there. It was an amazing night. Robin Windsor was there from Strictly Come Dancing. You can catch him on News Global TV as well. Their interviews are great. Please look into them. But what a great evening, and a great shout out to all the acts and volunteers. What a brilliant evening. But we're sticking with art. We've got, Freeze has just finished, and also Start. But the Biennale is going on in Venice, and there's a few things coming on in town. Now, LGBT community, the art has been a big voice for them, and nothing bigger than my guest today. Dusty O has been a voice for years for the LGBT community. He's done an article in the Daily Mail on how to make money as a drag queen before RuPaul's gang jumped on board. And his art collection, which is phenomenal, appeared at the Houses of Parliament, the first openly gay artist to say openly gay, yeah, an artist to appear there. And he's going to be my guest today. Dusty David Hodge is a legend, and I'm really excited to have him here. So can I welcome you, Dusty O, David Hodge. Hi, David.
Hi.
We're joining you in bed. That's quite exciting.
How are you?
So you've got a cup of tea in bed, which is a first for the show, actually. But maybe I'll start doing it.
I am. I'm in bed. We're having some work done on the flat, so everything's in boxes. So I couldn't find a place in the flat that didn't look like an old dump, basically. So you've got me in bed.
I like the wallpaper background. But David, so what is, there's so much going on in London at the moment, art-wise. We've just had Start. I know you showed at Saatchi Gallery, and we've had Freeze, and the Biennale is going on in Venice, and so it's an exciting time for art. But what is art to you? What does it mean to you?
So you've made such a connection to me, really. I mean, I do sell with Saatchi, which is lovely, but all of those big art festivals and the things like Freeze, etc., I don't feel that I have any particular connection with them, and all my exhibitions in the past have been very personal and in places that have mattered to me. Like I did one in for example, the second one I ever did was in the basement of a shop in Brick Lane. And it was strange because just over the road there was a big art festival on, and they were charging like £18 to go in and even look, and there was me on the street with my flyers, come down to my basement and have a look at my pictures. So I don't feel very sort of like compatible with the corporate art world. It doesn't really do it for me. I always prefer just to do my own thing in my own way.
I was saying that art is what an artist says it is. You can take a wooden plank and spray paint and put it on the wall and sell it. So it's all very individual. I don't think you have to be involved in the corporate world of art, but there is that kind of snobbery, isn't there, slightly?
There's total snobbery, and the corporate world is all about making money from it, and everyone has to make a living, and that's fine. But yeah, it's not something that I connect with.
Performance art's enormous now. I mean, Barry sort of kicked off the movement, but you're quoted saying being in Tranny Shack, and a young male performer came on stage and basically sat in a martini glass, and you said
yes, that was
memorable. Is there ever a time you think the performance arts goes too far now?
Well, on that particular occasion, I think that was like a direct snub for me. It was someone who was playing me up. However, it did turn the party into the talk of the town, and it was very funny. It was, and I just still to this day don't know how he managed to do it on cue. you know. And how do you do a poo in a martini glass on cue in front of like 300, 400 people? But he managed it, so hats off to him.
I mean, Lee Barry was notorious for dishing on stage. So this is the next step. Or Divine eating shit and Pink Flamingo.
Yeah. Well, you know, my work's not really like that, but
yeah,
but that's fine if that's what they want to do.
You've painted Lee Barry. Who were your early influences art-wise?
Well, I was always quite fascinated as a child with people like Molly Parkin. You know, she was a fashion editor and writer and artist, very famous in the 70s and 80s. And I was always kind of fascinated with her, mainly because her visuals were so spectacular. You know, she looked amazing. Yeah. And people like Zandra Rhodes and Vivienne Westwood. Lee, I was always, you know, Lee was just such a phenomenal force of nature. Whenever you went out and Lee was in the club, it was literally like performance art, even if he wasn't doing anything. So yeah, he was like a big influence on me. But I always kind of was drawn to people like Lee had a friend called Trojan, who was an artist, as well as someone who dressed up and went to discos. And I was kind of fascinated with him. And in the 80s, I had a shop in Birmingham. And I called the shop because he was kind of like one of my people who I was very keen on sort of getting to know and getting to see. Yeah, I found him very, very interesting.
You're talking about putting makeup on, of course. Dusty was legendary. What do you think of things the girls that are doing, the queens that are doing RuPaul? Are you a fan of the show?
I've only ever seen one episode of it, to be quite honest. I deliberately don't watch it. Yeah. Not because I feel any sort of animosity to it or anything. It's just that I don't feel particularly connected to that world anymore. Yeah. And I've been away from it for 6 years now. And as I was leaving, that was just when it was like really kicking off in this country, when people were becoming more and more fascinated with the whole RuPaul's Drag Race thing. I think it's quite generic. I think for me personally, I was never very interested in performing to 15-year-old girls who were fans of the show. You know what I mean? Yeah, which is their kind of demographic. Yeah. That wasn't why I did drag.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes they can be a bit conformative in how they do their makeup, and it's all a bit YouTube. But it's how it is, you know, and you either move with the times or you get forgotten by them. But for me, I don't really care about RuPaul and RuPaul's Drag Race, and I don't really care that much about drag anymore, to be totally honest with you. I think you have to evolve as a person. And
you mentioned that that's not the reason you got into drag. Why did you get into drag originally?
Well, I got into drag sort of by accident, really. When I first started going out on the gay scene in Birmingham, it was very alternative in the mid 80s, early 80s, mid 80s, and boys wore lots of makeup and had big hair, and it was all very sort of, you know, very sort of left wing, left field. And so drag sort of just naturally kind of followed me, actually. By the time I moved to London, I'd always worn makeup, I'd always dressed up. But when I moved to London, that was when Kinky Glinky, sorry, my cat's tail is getting in the way.
So cute. I love a pussy.
And it just kind of, people started asking me to do it, you know, so because I was quite good at it.
Yeah.
And I saw it as a great way to make friends, to go out, to have a fabulous time. And that's what I did, really. There was never really a plan. It just happened.
No, you mentioned growing up in Birmingham. What was your childhood like growing up?
I had a very working class Midlands childhood. Brought up on a council estate in quite a rough, sort of hard to do area. The Midlands in general, the black country where I'm from, is, you know, it's tough. But I had great parents, you know, they had their problems, as all parents do, and families do, and we had our share of them. But I was very insular, really, as a child. I was always very aware that I was different to most of the people around me, even at that early age. And so I kind of like created my own little world. And as soon as I could sort of branch out, I did.
Who were your influences back then as a child? Did you look and think I identify with that?
Well, obviously, the first person I sort of really paid massive attention to was 1982, was Boy George.
Oh,
You know, there's no getting away from that. And he's been an influence on me ever since, really. And now, you know, with George and I have been friends for over 25 years.
Let's go sticking with your childhood. What advice would you give young Davids if you went back in time and sat them down?
Just do whatever you want to do, but do it nicely.
Yeah.
I wished I'd have been a little bit more kind at certain stages of my career.
David, you mentioned that you've changed your life, but you know during the heyday, Madam Jojo's and everything, you sort of ruled Soho, and so what made you decide?
So I'm told.
So you're told. You say that in your book.
Didn't feel like it at the time. But there you go.
No, it does. You look back and people say, "Oh, you were fabulous at that party." You think, was I?
I don't remember most of them, to be honest.
Was there a defining point you decided I need to change my life?
Yes, there was. Towards the end, Tranny Shack had been going 10 years, and Tranny Shack was kind of like my main club, I suppose you'd associate me with. I'd been doing it for 10 years, and we'd done all sorts of things with Tranny Shack. You know, we'd done a book, we'd done an album, Move. We'd done an album, we'd done a DVD of videos, we'd done this Tranny Shack competition every year, which was massive. We'd done floats, we'd done, you name it, festivals, everything. And I didn't really know what to do with it anymore. It was kind of like I'd got to a point where I'd done what I wanted to do with that particular thing. And I'd done every look that I ever wanted to look like. And I'd been in, you know, on the West End stage at that point for 7 years, doing shows at the Leicester Square Theatre, big shows. And I wasn't getting any joy from it anymore. It was just like, been there, done that. And I remember I woke up one morning and I'd started getting quite a lot of grief as well, like online, with younger queens calling me a dinosaur and blah, blah, blah. And
Yeah,
I just thought, I don't need this crap anymore. Where can this go? You know, I thought the only route that it could go to progress any more was if I was to do something like Drag Race or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
And I didn't want to do that. So I'd been on TV, I'd done everything you can think of that I'd spread my little bit of talent so thin over such a wide area. I just didn't want to do it anymore.
So talking about loving yourself, if others love you, notoriously back in the day, say people like Mark Fleming, Mrs. Shufflewick, and all that crowd, the drag queens were celebrated on the stage and in the gay bars, but romantically, it was a kiss of death for many. The minute a guy put a frock on in the gay scene, and it seems to have changed over the years. Has as Rue says, loving yourself brought love in your life? Are you a romantic person?
Yes, very. I'm married. I've been married for 6 years. I met someone towards the end of my drag career, really, and also that helped me sort of move on as well, because I didn't want to be out every night, you know, until 5 a.m. I wanted a life with my partner, and I'd had relationships before, but the drag had always interfered with them, because I mean, if you think about it, you're a gay man, you want a relationship with a man, but the man that you have in a relationship with spends most of his time pretending to be a woman, you know, or like pretending to be whatever. And it just doesn't work really for a lot of people. It didn't work for me long term with several of my partners. But then I did find someone who was great, but who encouraged me to sort of move away from what had become a pain.
It seems to have changed a little bit. Listening to some of the guys on RuPaul and other things, they're in relationships and some are married. But I do know back in the day, a couple of them say to me, "Oh, it's a kiss of death, darling." The minute you pop a frock on.
Well, times change, don't
yeah,
they? You know,
I mean,
nice people are much more
yeah.
aware of non-binary people. People are much more aware of gender fluidity, and I think that's great. You know, that so me moaning about RuPaul. Well, I haven't moaned about. I like RuPaul, but me moaning about the concept of it becoming sort of generic. On the one hand, you've also got the other hand on the other hand, that it's becoming more acceptable to, and more people are thinking about it more. Yeah. And that's the good side of shows like RuPaul, in that they're showing people as people and not just as silly clowns in frocks. You know?
What's your general process when you create a piece of art?
Usually starts with like a little bit of an idea about something or an interest in something. A lot of the work I've been doing recently has been kind of almost graffiti, stencily type work on abstract pictures that I'd already painted. And I kind of liked that concept because I think, this is at the moment, you know, things change. I think people tend to focus on the obvious, and the obvious would be, say, a person in a portrait, to the detriment of what's going on in the background. So I've kind of reversed it on this recent collection, and it's actually more about what's going on in the background than in the foreground. And so that sort of idea interested me. It is very varied how I sort of get inspiration for a picture. As I said, an idea, and then I think, well, how can I present that idea? Then I have to work out a way that I can present that, really, and present it in a way I'm happy with. So I use a variety of means. I've used Dutch pause, which is this method of like creating beautiful backdrops. I've used graffiti, I've used cartoon, everything I can think of. I've tried, you know, my work's just does its thing, you know. I don't really plan it too much, because for me, if I surround myself by other people's work, it influences me too much, because I'm like a sponge and I steal their ideas. And it's good to steal ideas. I mean, all my work is completely stolen. It's good to steal ideas, but put yourself in them as well, you know. So I kind of keep myself sort of isolated from other artists, really, because they can make you feel really depressed about your work if theirs is fantastic. And also they can influence you too much.
I mean, you talk about art being quite an insular experience, but equally you say that you like being around people. How have you balanced the two together?
Well, I still work. When I stopped JoJo's, obviously I had to find an income. You know, when JoJo's closed and Tranny Shop finished, and I decided, when it finished, I was halfway through a 74 show run at Leicester Square Theatre of a dirty panto that we used to do every year, and I knew that when that finished, I would have no income. You know, when that was done, that was gone, and I thought, right, I've got to find something that I can do. And I had a friend who owns two hair salons, two Aveda hair salons, and he said, well, why don't you come and work with us? You know, just do as much as you like, as much as you want to do, 2-3 days or full time if you want, and come and work with us and do our front of house. I'm good with people, but I was very bad with computers at that point. And I explained that to him. I said, well, I'm never going to be able to work your booking system. It's like a nightmare. And but he was very kind, very, very patient, helped me, and gradually I sort of got the knack of it. And I've worked there ever since. And do you know, even if my art took off and they were selling for hundreds of thousands, I'd still do my 2 or 3 days a week at the salon, because I really enjoy it. And people laugh, you know, my family go, well, you don't really need to do that now, do you? And no, I don't need to do it financially, but I need to do it mentally.
Yeah, of course,
because they're my friends. And it's a big salon, there's 30-40 staff, you know, and they're my friends. And that life is so different from the life I had. And the people I meet are so different to the people who I used to meet, that I've really embraced it. And I like the routine, and I like the order, and I love the job, and I like making people happy when they're walking out with beautiful hair. And I like the dramas, the salon dramas, the rows, and you name it. And
Did you ever want to be a hairdresser?
I did used to want to when I was about 16, but I only lasted 3 days. I worked in a salon in Wolverhampton called Mitch Wilson, I think it was. He was married to someone from Duran's sister. Yeah. There's some story about it anyway. And hang on, the cat is now digging my leg. Stop it. And I worked there for 3 days. But when I realised how hard work it was, because it is hard work working in the salon, I preferred the disco option.
Who would you like to paint you haven't painted yet?
The thing is, a lot of the people I paint, I don't meet them. Like I've done a really beautiful picture of Cher. I've only ever met Cher once, but I wanted to paint her because that time that I met her was so important to me. It's like a memory. I've met Cher. I sat next to Cher and had dinner with Cher, and that not many people can say that. So I wanted to sort of to portray that, but I had to do it obviously from other people's pictures of her, But I think I've got my take on her through it. But I'd like to, ridiculously, of course, I'd like to paint the Queen, but that's not going to happen. Or I'd like to paint the Pope. Or I'd like to paint Daniel Lismore, but he's far too grand to ever let me paint him these days.
Let's cut back to Cher. We had dinner with Cher.
Yes, I had dinner with Cher and Madonna, actually.
Oh, which was the nicest?
Oh God, Cher. I write in my book, in my memoir, the incident with Madonna, and I give the full gossip on it, I suppose you could say. And she was quite an unpleasant person, and rude and offish, and had a very negative energy. Whereas Cher was the exact opposite. Cher was warm, welcoming. She understood that I was shitting myself sitting next to her. And she was just very lovely and warm and kind and funny and nice. And whereas Madonna sat like with her back like that to us most of the night and just spoke to one person around this dinner table.
That's what Cher says about Madonna. She's rude.
Is it? Yeah. Well, she is rude. She's rude. And do you know what? I kind of like it that she's rude. I like it. It's her. That's Madonna. Madonna is rude. Madonna is Madonna. And I love Madonna, but she was a can.
I've had so many mixed stories about it. Anyway, back to you. You were the first queer artist to show in Parliament, including a Trump painting. How did the exhibition go down?
Went really well, actually. I sold every picture. I exhibited 26 pictures, and bear in mind it was only up for a day. Yeah. We invited 600 people, and they all came because it was Parliament. Usually, when you invite people to things, you're lucky if you get 1 in 20 who you actually invite, but everyone came. They drank the bar dry. We were sponsored by Davenport's Brewery, and Baron Davenport is one. He collects my works, and Davenport's Brewery's head office in Birmingham, there's a whole corridor full of my works, and he's an amazing person, and he sponsored the exhibition and bought all the champagne and food, and it was beautiful do, but it was all gone in about half an hour. As I say, all pictures sold, which was amazing, but it was kind of such an honor to be where we were, because it was, we were right by the Westminster Hall, which is where they it's the oldest part of Parliament. Yeah, it's the bit where the monarchs lie in state when they're dead, and overlooks the green where Charles II was executed. Charles I was executed. Yes, and you're in this amazing place. And there was on the walls there was old masters, and then on easels there was mine. And we couldn't put anything on the walls because the wallpaper was like silk and worth £1 million a roll and all that shit. And it was just so bizarre to be there, but really nice, and to be, because my work is so overtly queer. Yeah. you've got MPs popping in, like the Tory grandees, and they were like, "Ooh, look at it," you know, obviously not getting it at all, which was kind of the point. But yeah, it was an amazing experience.
And your Trump piece went down quite spectacularly, I understand.
Yeah, sold. It was the day that he went to Parliament.
You've been a voice of the gay community. Do you think when we've come some distance, do you think we'll ever see an end to homophobia?
I don't think it will be in my lifetime, or probably your lifetime. I don't. It's so difficult to say, isn't it? I think things in some ways are getting better in some parts of the world, and in other ways they're getting worse in various parts. Certainly the radicalization of populations into one way of thinking seems to be getting worse and in certain communities and things, and then in others it's a lot freer, you know.
What would London, your hometown, what's your perfect day in London? What would your perfect day out be in London?
Perfect day out in London? Well, you've got such beautiful free galleries in London, which you haven't got in most parts of the world. You have to pay. So a great day out for me would probably be a trip to a nice gallery, or one of the royal palaces or something like that. Do a little tour and something nice to eat. Maison Berthaud in Soho for cakes and coffee, and then a little wander around the beautiful Regent's Park Zoo. A couple of hours there, and then maybe walk through Primrose Hill down to Camden, do a few shops, cup of coffee. London's great for things like that. I'd like quiet, laid back, cultured.
Now, if you were mayor of London for the day, what would you change about London?
What would I change? I had to think about this, and I thought what I'd really love to do is, can you imagine if they passed a law and they said that every homeowner or home resident, rent or whatever, everyone who got a flat or a house, or actually everyone, not just people with houses, but if everyone had to make a piece of artwork and hang it on their door, you'd have this huge exhibition of millions and millions of pieces, and you could just do whatever you wanted. It could say whatever you wanted. It could be about whatever you wanted. Complete freedom, and call it the Freedom Exhibition.
Wonderful idea.
Free. It would be everywhere. You wouldn't have to even travel to go and enjoy it. You know, you could just walk down your street or whatever. Wouldn't that be an amazing thing to do?
I'd love that. That's and also you might discover some talent in that they didn't know they had. Or that's a super idea, David.
Well, most people don't know that they can paint or draw, or everyone can. Art is free, and art's for everyone.
Yeah. David, you've got an exhibition coming up. Can you tell us a little bit about it and what else you've got coming up for the rest of the year?
Yeah. The exhibition's at the Brunswick Art Gallery, which is in Bloomsbury. It's a really beautiful gallery. It's free for people to go. It's between 11 and 6 each day. My exhibition runs from Friday the 22nd of October to the 22nd of November. It's called The Boy Who Sat by the Window. It's, as I say, it's part of a three-pronged attack: my memoir, my podcast, and my exhibition. And the podcast is available on all podcast platforms from the day of the start of the exhibition, so 22nd. So you can hear that. And it's kind of like a living memoir, really, of all my influences.
Now, David, your book is coming out next year. When's that due out? That sounds fascinating.
We're not sure of a date yet. We're doing some more work on it. Yeah. I've got a very good literary agent now, David Parrish, who's helping me with it. Yeah. The publishing company that we've gone with are not allowing us to say who they are yet. And we're working with an editor on basically completely rewriting it, because I thought it was finished, but you know what they're like. They want it to be the best it could possibly be. Yeah. So I'm working with an editor that will start just after Christmas. Yeah. And so hopefully maybe June, July of next year.
Well, listen, I wish you luck with it. And I'm really excited for the exhibition, and it was lovely chatting to you.
Thank you.
Thank you ever
so
much.
It was really nice speaking
and great to have the pussies in the bed.
Oh, making my life misery as usual.